What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for some more World Cup content for you guys, and today we're going to be looking at 10 players that Spurs fans should be keeping an eye on during this World Cup. We're on a bit of a scouting mission this World Cup. We're looking at centre-backs, we're looking at wing-backs, we're looking at attacking midfielders and wingers as well, to see what kind of players we can be scouting through this World Cup to bring in the summer, or maybe even January.
January, I think, is what we're looking at, 100%. Well, look, we all know
10 players in January.
100%. Well, look, we all know that with the January transfer window coming straight after the World Cup, and we all know that many tournaments previously, there's always been stars of the World Cup. They get a lot of attention. All of a sudden, clubs are after them, and hopefully Tottenham are keeping an eye on this World Cup and see maybe for potential players. And we're just thinking who in this tournament would suit our squad, and who we should be looking at potentially to sign, and who should be keeping a close eye on to see if they are good enough for Spurs.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's start off with the first player we're going to be looking at, and that is Netherlands' DENZEL DUMFRIES, obviously of Inter Milan. We actually brought you a Tottenham update yesterday with Spurs being linked to him. Right wing back, very good player. 15 appearances for Inter this season, 1 goal, 3 assists, a market value of 28 million. And it is rumoured that Inter Milan are willing to let him go potentially this January or in the summer. He's one as well that I've gone on record to say that I would love to see him at Spurs. He does have his defensive frailties, but going forward, he's one hell of a player. So I'd love to bring him in.
And obviously it was the Euros last time out that convinced Inter Milan to shell out the money for him, and obviously he's gone on to have a pretty good time of it at Inter Milan, albeit it seems as though they're also open to offers, which maybe points to a fact that he's not the perfect wing back. But the Euros, he was brilliant. He was a really good attacking threat at Euro 2020, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he performs. I'm pretty sure he's going to be starting every game for the Netherlands right wing back. I think they play a 3. Do they play a 3 at the back, Holland? I've got a feeling they do.
I'm not sure about that.
Play a 3 at the back. I was just off memory. I can't remember exactly, but I think they might play a 3 at the back.
I don't think they do, but I'll check it. But
and he gets forward really well.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they do.
Ake, Van Dijk, and Timber at the back.
Yeah, I thought so. So obviously that could definitely lead to a better comparison into how he can fit in at Spurs as well. So I'll be definitely keeping a close eye on Dumfries to see how he gets on.
All right, so that is number 1, DENZEL DUMFRIES. And let's move on and let's look at USA's Weston McKennie. Obviously plays for Juventus. We've got previous of signing Juventus players before. He's another one that has been linked to Spurs since Paratici has joined the club. We do know, Paratici is the one that brought him over to Juventus. So it's definitely one that we could be looking at. 24 years of age, central midfielder, 11 appearances for Juventus this season, 1 goal, 1 assist, a market value of 21 million euros. Obviously, Juventus bought him off Schalke for 25 million euros, so his market value has gone down a little bit in the past year or so, but he's definitely one that we should be looking at, isn't he?
Yeah, and obviously USA in England's group, so we will also get to see him tested against kind of Premier League opposition to see how he stacks up physically and stuff. I've got no doubt about he'll probably do well in that respect, but we'll get to see it firsthand as we watch England versus USA. I'm pretty sure he'll be starting, and obviously he's as you say, Paratici seems to be a massive fan of him. So does Antonio Conte. I think there's always been constant rumours about Spurs going in for Weston McKennie. Obviously, it would help bolster our midfield options. Although, if you talk about the profile midfielder we need, you might not necessarily think he would be top of the list. But he obviously adds depth, and he could easily compete with Højbjerg and Bentancur, seeing as what a job Conte has done with those two to improve them on, especially offensively. We know McKennie has that offensive side to his game as well. He does chip in with the odd goal and assists, and so if Conte can bring that further out of him, he could even be an upgrade potentially, and he's young, so he would definitely be one to watch out for.
Yeah, and I know he's held in very high regard in the US national team, and all the fans do think that he is going to be a big star, or he is a big star in the making. So I would love to see him through the door. If you do see him through the door, do you think that stunts maybe one of Bissouma, Bentancur or Højbjerg?
I don't know about stunts, but I think for sure they're obviously going to see a lot less game time because he's a very similar profile of player to them. So in a 3-4-3, I think he's a better fit for the two midfield than Basuma. So I think Basuma will find it hard to come by in that 3-4-3. In a 3-5-2 though, I think there'll be plenty of game time for everyone. But I don't know about stunts, but I think definitely he puts a spanner in the works for Bentancur and Højbjerg, who will start pretty much every game.
All right, let's move on to number 3, and that is Jesper Lindstrom of Denmark. Currently plays for Eintracht Frankfurt, so we saw him firsthand against us this season. Current market value 28 million, and in the last year, his market value has tripled. So a year ago today, it was 10 million euros, Jesper Lindstrom. He is 22 years of age. He's been deployed in 3 different positions this season as second striker, attacking midfielder, and a left winger. What do you know about Jesper Lindstrom?
He's played right winger quite a lot as well this season, it says.
A right winger as well.
So. Yeah, so I think for me, he actually is could be a very good alternative to Kulusevski in my book. And that's exactly the kind of position we're looking for. Obviously, his versatility means he can play pretty much right, left, or centre. Not maybe centre up front, but definitely left or right in terms of the wings. He's very creative. He's a tricky little player. I was quite impressed when he played against us this season. He nearly scored that brilliant goal in our 3-2 victory at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It was only a fingertip save from Hugo Lloris, which tipped over the bar. Otherwise, it would have been a brilliant curling effort to the top corner. I think he's obviously coming on leaps and bounds in the Bundesliga this season, and I'm pretty sure he'll get a starting berth for Denmark in their team. And I really like the look of him. And if he has a good World Cup, I think that could maybe convince us that maybe he is someone worth pursuing because he's having a very good season at the moment with Frankfurt. So his price could be fairly reasonable potentially as well. And at 22 years of age, he could be that alternative we need to Kulusevski.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because he actually only signed for Frankfurt last summer for 7 million euros, and only playing 14 games so far with 6 goals, 2 assists. Do you reckon he's easily gettable after only being at Frankfurt?
Not in January, but maybe in the summer.
Well, only 1 year there.
Yeah, I mean, I think players after only being 1 year at a club, it used to be more of a thing. If like when I was younger, I remember like if you only been at a club 1 year, you would always stay 100% a second. But I think nowadays, like players move after 1 year so often. It does, like if money just talks and that's it. So I think if the money's right, we can get him after a year.
All right, so that's Jesper Lindstrom. Let's move on to Pau Torres from Spain. We've spoken a lot about Pau Torres in the last year here on this channel. He was heavily linked to Spurs last summer. He didn't end up going anywhere. His market value is 50 million, plays on the left-hand side of defence, left footer, 25 years of age, and a very good player. Very, very good player, and he was quite central to that big Villarreal run in Europe that they had. And I would love to see him at Spurs, I really would.
Yeah, he was excellent in the Euros in 2020. Now Unai Emery's left Villarreal, maybe that potential, but I know obviously he's very closely connected with Villarreal, as he suggested last summer when he said he didn't want to leave because he wanted to have that Champions League campaign with Villarreal, and obviously they got to the semi-final. Now that's over and Unai Emery's left, maybe that project seems to be coming to an end, and maybe he potentially could be more open to a move. He does usually, I believe, start for Spain in the centre-back role on the left-hand side. So I think if he can have another good tournament, surely that could be more convincing, because I feel like Spurs have always been very interested about him, but it's like I always feel like we're bulking because he's La Liga. Is he going to be able to translate that into Premier League? Is he going to be overawed physically? I feel like they're still not. They like him, but they're not 100% convinced. And maybe with a good World Cup, that will push over the line.
Yeah, it was probably the similar with Clement Longley, how they liked him but didn't want to spend the money on him, so they got him on loan, and Pau Torres probably wasn't available on loan. So that was the situation, but his contract does expire in 2024, so the longer he doesn't sign that contract, the more likely it is he is going to move, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So we'll see what happens there. Next up, we're also going to talk about a player that we have been linked to in the past, in NIKOLA MILENKOVIC of Serbia. Very tall defender, very physical, really, really good player at 25 years of age. Sorry. At 25 years of age, from Serbia, 1.95 meters tall, 11 appearances, 2 goals, 1 assist, a big aerial threat. And his current market value is 20 million with a year ago, well, in 2018, he had a market high value of 35 million. So it has dropped 15 million in that time.
Yeah, and obviously he signed that. He signed a long-term contract last summer. He was I think he was on the verge of joining West Ham, wasn't he? Last summer, he's been heavily linked to Spurs on a number of occasions. Obviously, he plays for Fiorentina pretty much every single game. He's a very important player for them. And he's always been a player of much interest for Tottenham, obviously playing in the Serie A, being a big, strong defender, which Spurs and Conte likes, and being decent on the ball as well. Serbia obviously having a very tough group with Brazil, Switzerland and Cameroon. So it'll be very interesting to see how they get on with that. And if he has a good tournament, again, eyes will be drawn to him. And I think that we need another centre-back. And I think he probably fits a decent profile of what we want. I reckon he could do well in a back three. I think more maybe in the centre where he doesn't have to rely on his pace as much. So if he could, but then again, he's obviously going to be a bit pricier than we could have had him for because of his new contract signing. But if he has a good tournament, Spurs could definitely reignite that interest.
I mean, he was available last time for like 15 million.
Yeah,
or something
it was a
crazy.
good price. I remember, and we waited till we signed the contract. Waited too long, basically. Basically, again, a bit like Pau Torres. It's like we liked him, but weren't 100% convinced. And that's a similar situation to Milenkovic.
Yeah, and he's scored quite a lot of goals. He joined there in 2017, and he scored about 17 goals in that
He's
time.
6'5", I think, 6'6". He's tall. He is tall.
He'll be Gianni Vio's wet dream, wouldn't he?
Yeah, 100%. You'd think so.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Stefan de Vrij, another player that we've been speaking about over the last couple of days and the last year of the Netherlands. He sits in the middle of the back three for Inter Milan, and I assume he'll do the same for the Netherlands in this World Cup as well. Absolute. I mean, he's 30 years of age, is getting on a bit. He did have a bit of a lull season last year where he wasn't playing at his top level, but it seems as though he is getting back, or, you know, much better than he was last year anyway this season.
Yeah, and he's obviously a player that Conte knows very well, who had him into Milan. He's a leader at the back of the back line. He's an extremely talented defender, and he's been consistent for many years. He wasn't great last season, although he seems to have a bit of a renaissance this season. Could be available for a decent price. I think the reason to keep a close eye on him is because if we're looking to bring him in, but we want to know he can still perform at a really high level and a really high be effective at that really high level, which maybe is people start to doubt last season. You know, he started to drop off, and always whenever there's a drop off in performance when you get to 30, people always like, oh, is he coming to an end? There's always that talk. Obviously, I do believe 30 years old, he can still have many years at centre back, because that centre back is a role you can have a much longer career, have much more longevity. We've seen players like Bonucci and Chiellini and Thiago Silva go on to mid-30s, still playing at the very high level. So I wouldn't say the age is massively against him, but it's always about if your performance is dropping off at that age, then there's questions. But if he has a great World Cup, I think that can convince us, all right, clearly he's still a very good defender and it's worth taking the risk on him.
Yeah, it was worrying signs that the performances did drop off last season. But I haven't watched enough of him this season to really say that it's come back to what it was maybe the season before that. But with his contract running out this summer, it could be a good opportunity, to get someone of that quality in for little to next to nothing, really. And maybe bring in a younger player with him as well, where you can spend maybe a hefty fee on him. So if you can bring him and maybe a younger one with him, I think that would be a really good option for us.
Yeah, if he has a good World Cup as well, I think that can answer a lot of questions.
Let's move on to the next play. Well, actually, first, before we do that, out of the three defenders we've mentioned here, who would be your number one pick?
I think Pau Torres, just because he plays on the left, and that's probably what we need a lot. And also maybe if we sign Pau Torres, then all of a sudden we can have Torres and Davis kind of competing, and then put Longley in the central role. I think Longley looks a bit better potentially there.
Do you think Villarreal let him go in the January transfer window, Pau Torres?
maybe for the right money. You know, Emre's left. Maybe he might want out. Who knows? If the money's right. I think again, if the money's right, I think again they were willing to sell him for 45, weren't they, to us? But he rejected us. But so if we can pay that money again, I reckon they might accept. I think he'd probably be my number one, and then I think De Vrij, and then probably Milenkovic.
It's interesting because I think I might put Milenkovic at number one.
Really?
I really like the look of Milenkovic, and I think that it's time that Dyer just needs some stiff competition. I think he'll provide that aerial ability from set pieces as well. I think will be a massive plus for us. And I think like if he was to come in January, then he would overthrow Dyer like very soon after. So I like to see maybe a back three of Romero on the right, Milenkovic in the middle, and Longley on the left.
I mean, sounds good to me.
Yeah. But let's move on. Let's talk about some attacking players now. And the first player we're going to talk about is Mohammed KUDUS of Ghana and Ajax. 14 appearances in the Eredivisie this year, 5 goals. But where he's really made his name this season has actually been in the Champions League. 6 goals, 4 assists, 6 apps, 4 goals and 2 assists. And he's really been shining in the Champions League this season. For Ghana, he's had 18 appearances and 5 goals. And he's only 22 years of age. Top talent, can play as striker, can play as attacking midfielder. And every time I've seen him play in the Champions League, he's been sensational. He really has.
Yeah, so he's definitely one. If he performs on the world stage for Ghana, because sometimes you get blinded by him scoring in the Dutch league. Some people say you can't learn too much from that.
He's actually scored more in the Champions League than he has in the Dutch league.
Champions League, clearly, he's made a big difference, hasn't he? That's for sure. And also, you get the feeling a young striker like that, who you can bring in, he's probably not going to command a starting spot straight away. He might be willing to fight for his place ahead of Kane and Son or whatever.
Versatile as well.
Versatile, can play in a few different positions. So you know, he seems to be breaking through right now for this Ajax team. Ajax are known for developing their young talent and bringing in superstars and developing stars of the future. And maybe if he has a good World Cup, he could be one we can snatch before he really explodes. So he's definitely one I'm going to be keeping an eye on for Ghana.
Absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on. But let's move on to a goalkeeper we've picked out. And this is Diego Costa of Portugal and Porto. He's having a bit of a, I'm not sure if it was last year or this year was the breakout season, but he really has announced himself on the stage, been brilliant in the Champions League. He's been brilliant in a really good Porto side as well. And maybe he could be the one that takes Hugo Lloris's throne.
Yeah, look, he's an interesting one. He's a young keeper, 23 years of age, which for a goalkeeper is very young. Most goalkeepers don't usually start for big clubs until, you know, at least mid-20s. But he's had 7 caps for Portugal, so he's really starting to grab that number 1 spot. I think the last 2 competitive games he has started. In the Champions League, he's been an absolute phenomenon this season. I think he saved 3 penalties in the group stage to the Champions League, which is a ridiculous. It's like he's unbeatable from the penalty spot, and he seems to be really tall, imposing. He seems to have incredible reflexes, and he seems to be a goalkeeper who's going to be have a really big future ahead of him. And still very young. I believe he could be a guy definitely to keep an eye on 100%.
The only problem with Diego Costa is that right now, as of now, at 23 years of age, he's got a market value of 35 million euros.
He's going to cost a lot of money. And he's got a contract that runs till 2027. So.
And on top of that, he's got a release clause in his contract for 15 million.
So if you want a goalkeeper, but then again, what you get with that is longevity. You know, he's 23. He could easily, as Laurie said, we're looking for a goalkeeper who's going to be our goalkeeper for the next 10 years. And that definitely represents the profile of that ilk.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on. Let's talk about another attacking player now, and Cody Gakpo from the Netherlands and PSV. He is having some sensational time of it in the Eredivisie and the Europa League, to be fair, with PSV. The guy is a super talent, 23 years of age. Market value of 45 million euros. This season alone, he's scored 14 appearances in the Eredivisie, 9 goals, 12 assists. And I think he's an absolute top talent. For the Netherlands, he's played 9 games, scored 3 goals. He can be deployed on each wing, can be deployed up front as well. He's been linked with a lot of teams over the summer. No one seemed to get it over the line. I think it was it West Ham that seemed.
There was
to come
Man
closest.
United. There was Leeds. Leeds got very close.
That was it.
Southampton as well were in for him, and I think we were tentatively interested without really showing serious interest. But he really has exploded this season. Last season he was good, but this season he has really turning into a bit of a machine, and he's proving why everyone wanted him pretty much last summer. And I guess if he was showing this form last season, then maybe someone would have definitely paid the fee, but maybe there was some reservations for some reason last summer over him. But I don't think there are any reservations anymore. I think everyone wants him right now.
But like you said before, it is numbers in the Eredivisie.
Yeah, it is numbers in the Eredivisie. And again, but I guess one thing is Europa League is doing well. I think it's 3 goals, 2 assists in 5 games. Against Arsenal, I thought he ran him ragged in that game. So that proves against Premier League opposition he was decent. And if he performs on the world stage...
Tell that to Conte about Jed Spence.
Yeah, I guess. But if he performs on the world stage, that could definitely go a long way to proving people he's not just good in the Eredivisie, and this guy's a top talent. So I think the World Cup is going to be a big opportunity for him to show that. But I think I think he's going to have a line of suitors queuing up for him either in January or in the summer for sure, and whether we can get in ahead of that is another thing. But I think a lot of eyes are going to be on him on the World Cup, and I think he's again the right profile from us. He's versatile, young, a winger, definitely would help the squad.
We have been burnt with players from the Eredivisie before. Vincent Janssen, Steven Berg. I mean, is it fair to say Steven Bergwijn? We were burnt from Steven Bergwijn.
I guess you have to say.
I'd like to still have him in the squad though. That's the thing.
Yeah, true. Look, it's always difficult when it comes to the Eredivisie, to be fair, because the quality of opposition you never know. But
Willem Korsten, was he from the Eredivisie?
I can't remember.
He got from Vitesse, wasn't he?
But you've also got good, there are some good players that you can get from the Eredivisie, 100%. I think he's got a lot of talent there. So I think it'd be silly just to write him off just because he's from that division.
I agree.
But you always have to, I guess that's always the reservation. I guess that's maybe why he hasn't signed for anyone yet.
But he is a name literally on everyone's lips at the moment, and the numbers he's getting is astonishing. So that's definitely one to look at. And next one is Joachim Mæhle of Denmark. Obviously had an amazing Euros, didn't he, a year and a half ago. Plays for Atalanta, 25 years of age, 14 million market value. Can play on either side of the defence as right or left wing back. What do you think about Joachim Mæhle?
Yeah, I mean, he's had a good Euros, and I think he's a good player in general. He doesn't really translated his Euros form for Atalanta, I don't feel. For Denmark, I thought he was sensational getting forward. He was such a big threat. He was getting in all those right positions. But for Atalanta, I don't think he's kind of as much as an attacking threat as he has been. And that
he's had 5 assists, 3 goals in 74 appearances. That's his whole time at Atalanta.
He's not particularly
and that's in a really attacking side.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, whether maybe it's a thing he fits the system at Denmark and he doesn't really do it at Atalanta as much, or maybe if he's surrounded by better players, his production would go up. I'm not 100% sure. Obviously, we've been heavily linked with him. But also you've got to remember there are some players who just at tournaments they just really for these nations they just turn up, and sometimes they overperform every tournament. I'm trying to think of players off the top of my head.
Perisic.
But people like Perisic maybe. I know. Yeah, I guess Perisic.
The thing is, Perisic was like that for a time, and then suddenly he started exploding for his club. And who was that down to?
Inter. I mean, Conte.
Exactly. So maybe the same can happen with Joachim Mæhle.
Yeah. Maybe he's one of those players. I'm not 100% sure because he hasn't been that inspiring for Atalanta. But if he can translate his Denmark form at Spurs, he could be a big asset. And the fact he can play left or right is really helpful as well. Yeah. So he's definitely one again to look out for.
All right. So I think those are our 10 players we are watching out for in the World Cup in terms of a scouting mission for Tottenham Hotspur. Let us know what you think of those 10 players. Who would you like to see through the doors at Hotspur Way? And also, if we have missed out anyone who we should be scouting for Tottenham Hotspur, let us know in the comment section below. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.